Welcome to the 20-second video in this video series on building an e-commerce website using React, Redux, GraphQL, and Firebase. In today's video, we're going to be looking at Firebase Security Rules. Before we get started, I just want to encourage you to check out my official YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/simpletut. Not only to check out my other videos, but to find the official playlist for this series. And again, I'll be posting a direct link in the description of this video. I also have the official GitHub repository for this project. And again, there'll be a link in the description. But most importantly of all, please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on those notifications. Firebase uses security rules to ensure that users are only able to read and write data that they are allowed. Now, if we look at our Cloud Firestore and the data that we currently have in our database, you'll see that right now we have 3 different collections, each with their own unique documents. But if we take a look at the rules, you'll see that we're using this wildcard to match all documents, and we're assigning read and write privileges to everyone. This is not secure because it means that anyone can read and write anything to and from our database. Now, the way that we handle this and security in Firebase is we target our specific collections, and then we assign different rules to those collections for different types of requests. We can be very generic and we can just target things like read or write, or we can be more specific and we can target specific actions like an update or the creation of a new document. And the permissions that we assign those different actions within those collections will determine what users have access to and the actions that they can perform on the front end using the client APIs that we've already built into our application. To access your security rules from your Firebase console, all you have to do is go into your Cloud Firestore and then click on Rules. But before we actually start writing these out, what I want to do is just make it super clear what the problem is by showing you an example of how this affects our front-end application. And then I'm going to show you how to fix it and how we can lock this down and make our database secure. The first thing that I want to do is give you an example of why security rules are important. And the easiest way for me to do that is to come back over to our front-end application and go to our order history page. So I want to talk to you about what's happening when we use this page. So on our order history page, what we're doing is we are sending the user's ID that is currently signed in, and we are fetching from our orders collection all of the documents that match the user's ID, right? Because we have a field within our orders documents called order user ID, and the ID in here is the user that this order belongs to. So we are able to fetch only the orders that match the user ID and the user that is currently signed in to our application. Now that is fine for our order history page. But let's think about how our order details page works. And again, we wrote this in the last tutorial of this series. The way that this works is whenever a user clicks on an individual order, we push them to a new route, which is order/the order ID. And then we take the order ID from the URL and we fetch it from our collection within our Firestore. Now, the security issue here is that if a user was able to discover the order ID of another user, there's no restriction, right? They would actually be able to access another user's order because all they'd have to do is guess that ID and just enter it into the URL. So I'm going to show you an example of that. So I'm going to come back over to my orders collection, and as you can see right here, I have 3 different documents within my orders collection. Now currently all of these contain the same orders user ID, but just for this example, I'm going to change the first one here, right? and I'm going to change the user ID that is within this document. So I'll just change this to anything, let's say 123, and let's update this document. So as you can see, if we look at these other two documents here, the user ID is still assigned to the account that I'm currently signed into. But if we look at this document here, I've changed the user ID here to 123. So although there's 3 documents here, if I come back over to the application, I go into my account, I'm now only getting those 2 documents, right? Because if you come back over here and look at the third one, the user ID is now of a different user. So I shouldn't be able to view that, right? I can only view these 2 orders. But let's say I know what this order ID is, and I could just copy that. I could come back over to the browser, right? I could go to my order details route, and I could manually replace the ID with the ID of an order from another user. And as you can see, I'm able to fetch that order's data. Now this is a security issue because it applies across the board. If we look at the security rules, we are allowing anyone to read and write anything from our database. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be applying security rules to ensure that this isn't possible. And this is why we use security rules, to protect and ensure that users are only able to access their own data. Now, before we write out any of these security rules, I just want to remind you what our Firestore looks like. So again, we have 3 different collections. Each one of those has its own unique documents. Now, the first collection we're going to be writing our security rules for is our orders collection. So I'm going to come back over to our rules here, and I'm going to talk you through some of the syntax here. Now, this again is just an expression language. It's not a complete language, but if you are familiar with JavaScript, of course, this is a JavaScript course, so I'm sure that you are. Some of this stuff might be quite easy for you to pick up. So this first line here is very generic. It just targets the current database, so we don't really need to worry about this line at all. What we do need to worry about is this here, right? So what we're currently doing on this line is we are matching all of the documents within our database and allowing anyone to read and write from it. So we really need to delete this line here because we definitely don't want to allow that. But again, to match a specific collection, we just have to use the match keyword and then target the orders collection. And then we need to use a wildcard. Now, the wildcard is used to target a specific document on a collection, right, when we are performing an action. And we might want to use that within our security rules, which is why we use a wildcard here. Now, if that doesn't make sense right now, just bear with me. Hopefully it will in a few moments. So again, we're now ready to start writing rules for specific actions. So what I'm going to target first is the create action, right? And we now need to define a condition. And this has to be true in order for us to allow this create action. And what we want to do here is we only want a new document to be created, right, if a user is signed in, right? Otherwise, we don't want to allow that action to be performed. So if you think about the front-end application, we require users to be signed in to our application to check out, to make a purchase. The reason is that, of course, when we save a user's order history, we need to save, along with the other data, the user's ID. We need that because on an order history page, where we actually go out and fetch an individual user, we need a way of knowing which order belongs to which user. So again, for this particular action, a user needs to be signed in. So what we can do here is we can just say if the request.auth.uid does not equal null, right? So all I'm saying here is that a user has to be signed in to create a new document within our orders collection, right? So that's great. I can publish those changes, right? But that's because the next thing that I need to do is I need to set a rule for allowing users to read from our orders collection. Now, if I come back over to the data tab here and look at my order document, you'll see that we have, again, if I just collapse this, it'll be a little bit easier to see. We have our order user ID field here, right? And we're going to target this because what we want to say is that a user should only be able to read the documents from this collection where the user's order user ID matches their own. So to target that, what I can do is come back over to my rules. I'm going to allow read if, so I'll say if here, the request auth UID, so this is the UID that is sent with this request, matches the resource.data, and then the field, again, which is order user ID, matches, right? So what we're saying here is we only want to allow a user to fetch documents as long as the document that is currently being requested, the order user ID on that document matches the ID sent with the request. And that is actually what is going to fix the security issue that I demoed to you just a few moments ago. But before we actually publish those changes, what I want to do is I just want to secure this collection. So there are a number of other actions that can be performed here. So for example, I'm going to disable, right, the update and the delete action, right? So I'm just going to say if false. So this will never return true, which means that for this orders collection, documents can never be updated or deleted, right? So that is just a bit of a security feature because we don't currently have functionality in the front end to allow for this kind of action. So it should never be performed. If you were to extend the functionality on the front end to incorporate some more of this functionality, you might need to update this rule. But for now, this is absolutely fine. Okay, so these are the only security rules that we need to set for our orders collection. The next collection that I want to target is going to be my users collection, right? So what I'll do is come back over to the rules tab. I'm just going to make some space here. And just like I did before, I'm going to use the match keyword /users. And then I'm going to use a wildcard here to target an individual user. And then I'm going to expand those open those brackets. And then for my users, it's going to be quite straightforward, right? So we're going to go ahead and allow the read action, create, update, and delete if the request dot auth and UID matches the user. So I already mentioned in this tutorial already that this is a wildcard for an individual user, right? So what that means is that we are going to allow users to only access data from our user collection if they are trying to view their own data. So they would never be able to fetch data that is not their own. So again, we can go ahead and publish that. And actually, at this point, we're ready to actually set the last security rules for our final collection, which is our products collection. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the match keyword /products. And then again, we're going to have a wildcard here for product. And that's an individual document on our products collection. And actually, in this case, we're going to be doing something a little bit differently to any of our other collections. We're actually going to allow the read action, right, for everyone, right? Because you don't need to be signed in to view our products data, right? Because think about it. We have our product search, our results page. Anyone who visits our website, whether they're signed in or not, should be able to download the data from our products collection because it is data that is open to the public. However, what we don't want to do is we don't want to allow anyone who is not an admin to actually access, to actually create, update, or delete data from our products collection. So what I'm going to say here is a little bit different. I'm going to say that we want to take the delete, update, and of course the create actions, and we want to disable them unless they are an admin. And again, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different here too. So something that you can do, which is really cool, is you can make a function that is a little helper function you can use throughout your security rules. And you can do this for pretty much anything. And in this case, I'm going to create a function which is going to be called isAdmin. And this is simply going to return a Boolean value that tells us if this current user from this request is an admin or not. Now, to actually determine if a user is an admin or not is going to be a little bit tricky, right? Because take this example here, right? We are currently within our products collection, but we need to find out if a user is an admin or not based on the data from a different collection. Now, to do that, I'm actually going to reference the official documentation provided to us from Firebase, and I'll paste a direct link to this in the description of the video. But I'd also like to just remind you that their documentation really is fantastic, and I'll be posting a link to that in, again, the description of the video, but feel free to check it out for yourself. But what they actually allow you to do is, within your security rules, literally narrow down the path to a specific collection and a specific document to actually compare values. So again, just to explain that maybe a little better, we're currently writing security rules for our products collection, but to actually determine if this user is an admin or not, we need to compare the values from the request with our users collection based on the data we have within our users collection. So all I need to do here is just return the result of calling get. Now what get allows me to do is jump outside of the current security rule. So if I'm writing a security rule for example, my products collection, I can use the get method to jump outside of my products collection and go and fetch the document or the data that's within a different collection. I just have to give it the path. So I'm going to paste in what I took from the Firebase documentation, which allows me to go into my users collection, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm just going into the current database, into my users collection, and then I'm getting, based on the request objects and the user ID that was sent with the request object, I'm getting the current user's document, right? And the current user's data. And then by chaining on .data, the name of the field that I want to fetch and compare, which is called user roles. And then I'm going to compare that with a static value, which is an array containing two strings, one user, and the second is admin. What this will allow me to do is check whether a user is an admin or not, right? So all I have to do here is then call isAdmin, right? And just say if isAdmin returns true or false, then we will allow these actions to be performed. So I can publish those changes, and I just want to come back over to my user collection and explain again how this works. So if you'll see that on my users documents, I have this user roles field, but you'll see that if I come over to the document of an admin user, that only admins have the, of course, the admin string within their user roles array. So again, all I'm doing here within my rules is I'm just saying that and that is why within my security rule here, I am checking for an array that contains both the user and the admin string. Okay, so we're almost finished, but the last thing that I want to do is I just want to change the security rule I defined for my users collection. So what I did here was I said that users should only be able to perform these actions if they're trying to perform them on their own document, on their own data. What I'm going to say here is I'm going to use or, and I'm just going to say if it's their own document that they're trying to modify, or if they are an admin. So I'm just going to call my admin function. And the reason I'm calling that here is because an admin should be able to make changes to anything within the user's collection. So I'm going to go ahead, publish that, save those changes. Okay, so we're now ready to go ahead and test out the application. Again, although we've implemented those security rules, as long as we've done it correctly, no functionality on the website should change, right? So let's go ahead and test it. So again, if I come over to my search page, I'm still able to search and fetch for more results. As you can see, you can go to a details page. I can still add items to my cart. Let's try and sign into the application. So I'll just enter in my email. Let's go ahead and sign in. So I'll click on login. Okay, I'm signed into the application. I can come to my order history. As you can see, I can view the order history. I can click on individual orders, and I can still fetch those orders. Now, something that I've shown you at the start of the tutorial was we were previously allowing users to view order data from other users, which was a massive security issue. So now that we've fixed it using security rules, let's try and test that out. So again, we are able to view these two orders here because again, the order user ID matches the user that is signed into the application. That's why if I come to my order history, I can see these two. But if I manually enter the ID of this third order here, and again, if I look at the user ID here is 123, so I should not be able to view this order. If I come back over to the application, manually enter the URL, you'll see that I don't actually see any of the order data because we are actually handling the security on the server side. And that brings us to the end of this video tutorial. Thank you for following. I just want to remind you guys to check out the official playlist for this series. I'll be posting a direct link in the description of this video. Also check out the official GitHub repository for this project. But most importantly, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I look forward to catching you in the next one.